Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Small Business Solution Series workshop. I'm your host today, Titonian Wallace Sr. I'm the owner of Nasace Media and the chair of the Small Business Entrepreneur Council. We are the council within the chamber that puts on these SBSS series for you. If you're interested in learning more about or joining the Small Business Entrepreneur Council, feel free to visit the chamber's website and use the contact form, or in the chat, you'll see a link to the Small Business Entrepreneur Council page on the website. And just feel free to use that contact form to reach out and say you're interested in joining or getting more information about the Small Business Entrepreneur Council, and someone will be in contact with you. So today, we continue our discussion regarding cybersecurity and why it's important for your business and your clients. Before we introduce our speakers, I'd like to take time to first introduce the Small Business Solution Series sponsor for 2022, Elizabeth Case of Yellow Dog Consulting. Elizabeth.
Thank you so much, Titonian. Good morning, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Case. I own Yellow Dog Consulting. I am a certified MailChimp partner, and I do email marketing for small business owners. So when you start to curse and get frustrated with your newsletter and your open rates, or this isn't fitting right, or I hate it and I don't want to do it myself anymore, I am your person. So you can check out my website at yellowdogconsulting.com. I'll throw that in the chat here. And if you ever have questions about your small business marketing needs, and especially your email marketing needs, I am always happy to chat and happy to be sponsoring the SBSS. Thanks so much for having me.
All right, thank you, Elizabeth, and thank you for sponsoring the SBSS series for 2022 and for being an active and valued member of the Small Business Entrepreneur Council. Thank you very much. So today we have a couple of great presenters for you speaking about different aspects of cybersecurity. First, we will have Lyndsay Kooistra of LaPorte Insurance speaking about evaluating insurance for cybersecurity and risk management. And returning for the second half of our presentation today will be Eric Steffes of Stable Systems. And he'll be going over a cybersecurity questionnaire, what the question means, what each question means and why. And this will give our viewers a look into what is given to businesses by security professionals or IT companies. So I believe a lot of value will be provided today in this call, and it's very timely with everything going on as far as hackings and breaches left and right. And so today we'll start off the presentation with Lyndsay. Lyndsay, take it away. It's all yours.
All right. I am going to share my screen. Can everybody see that okay?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So thank you very much for inviting me to speak today. Cyber insurance is one of my favorite things to speak on. I will say that I'm really good at speaking about it for 5 minutes or 2 hours, but 20 minutes is hard for me. So I took my PowerPoint and scaled it down, and I'm going to try to go through it as quickly as I can, but also touch on the important things that I want to highlight. So today, all right, let's make sure I move along. Okay, we're going to talk about some different examples of claims breaches that we have seen in the last couple of years, and the ones I'm going to speak about we have seen at our agency, or I've heard about from other agents and underwriters and so forth. And then we're going to talk about some insurance solutions as well as risk management and how you can protect yourself. So I did provide Deanna with a deck of this slideshow. So there are going to be a lot of different resources in here that you might want to pull and look at later. I wanted to kind of put this screen up here about the different statistics. It is incredibly more and more difficult to protect yourself from hackers that are getting into our systems from all different realms. And it's even harder to then respond to that when you've had a cyber attack. And you can kind of see from this page the different statistics on the cost and the different security requirements that are being made of different businesses and so forth out there. So there are multiple different ways that a breach can occur. I love my little word clouds, so I had to leave that in my presentation, as well as I wanted to leave in here just the different types of data that can be stolen. So obviously your personal identifiable information known as PII, the health information, PHI, and then everything in terms of the credit cards, which is PCI. And then I listed just kind of some of the data that you might have as a business owner that you're storing, and employees is a big one. And then here is another chart of just kind of all the different cyber causes of loss out there. You can see that these are lots of different types of claims that can happen. And these types of claims are not covered under a normal general liability policy or property policy, otherwise known as either a package or business owner's policy, or BOP, in the insurance industry. Insurance companies can throw on little endorsements here and there that may give you 50,000 or 100,000 of data breach coverage. But when you're talking about a big cyber loss, that policy is going to get maxed out if it even responds. And that's why you want to look at a true cyber insurance policy. So a big question that comes up is why is it so expensive? Obviously, after there has been an attack, a loss, we've got to figure out, okay, how did it happen? And that's a huge expense. Then you got to figure out who it happened to. And each state has their own laws that you have to comply with, of the person that was hacked, or that the person that was affected for each state that they live in. So if you're a retail store and you're selling stuff online, that could be multiple states, right? That you have customers in. So that obviously is a large expense. And then notifying everyone after there's been an attack, that could be physical mail, it could be email, it could be call centers. It really depends on the size of the breach and then what that state requires you to do. And then obviously there's potential offering of credit monitoring that's going to have to be required too. So a couple of different examples, and these are ones that I have seen happen to folks. So client showed up to work one morning and their computers weren't working. Where do you start, right? Sometimes that could be a demand of paying so much Bitcoin. Otherwise, or the system's just not working. And in this case, the business owner, they contacted their IT company. The IT company started digging into it and basically discovered that someone tried to put ransomware on their computers, but they did so much damage that didn't even happen, and they lost almost everything. They did find out after the fact that it was actually a retired employee of the IT company that's computer got hacked, and that's how they got into the business. But it took months and months to rebuild everything. In terms of a cloud, I often will talk to clients who say, well, I have everything on the cloud. It's hosted by XYZ company. I'm not really worried about it. And I always say, look back at the contract that you signed with that cloud company, because in most cases, whoever puts the information in the cloud is ultimately responsible for it. So I wanted to bring that up. And then obviously there has been the TurboTax situation happened as well. And so I have a little link there on the deck that you'll see that you can read more about that. And then does anybody know what type of cyber claim we see most in our industry? Nope. All right. It is actually social engineering. So also known as phishing or email spoofing. So this has happened multiple times where, you get an email, it's 4:30 on a Friday, and it's from your boss's boss, somebody saying, hey, you need to send X amount of money to this person. Otherwise, we're losing this contract. We're losing this deal. And you got to do it by 5. And the person that gets that email is incredibly scared. Oh my gosh, it's this person. And I need to do this. And they send off the money without even picking up the phone to double check, or sending another email going, oh, wait, this is different. Or why is this a new, wiring account number? All of these emails come across as very urgent, and you got to do it yesterday, right? And this is really what has hit the industry hard over the last couple of years. I will say, I think that the 2021 statistic is that ransomware was the #1 attack, but social engineering still right up there. And it can happen to anyone. It doesn't matter the size of your business. It's going to happen. And so a couple different things I want to bring up here is, okay, so social engineering, it can be covered under a cyber policy, but you've got to ask for it and do an application for it. It can also be covered under a crime policy because it's loss of money, right? So, and those two policies can stack on top of each other if you do it right. So the common sublimit for social engineering is going to be 100,000. 250,000. You can get higher limits up to $1 million, but it costs money and it's a longer application. I will tell you that. So a couple of things that I have seen that have happened over the last few years when it comes to social engineering claims. It had a contractor that had sent a invoice to one of their clients who were building a custom home with them, said, okay, we're ready for your $90,000 payment. And then the hacker swooped in right behind that and said, oh, wire the money here, not here. And the homeowner did it and the money was gone. And it was about $90,000. Also have seen with manufacturers, they win a bid, right, to manufacture a product, and everything looks great, almost too good to be true. They send off everything to their new client and find out later down the road that after somebody has taken all of that equipment or product, it was a hacker and the bill is left unpaid. So it also isn't just, about money or goods, right? It's also about employee data. So I know of someone who is in HR and they got an email from the COO saying, hey, we need our employee information, past and present, for the last 5 years. For XYZ, please send it to me by 5 o'clock. And then they sent all of that information off and to a hacker. So those are just kind of a couple examples that I have seen over the last few years. I'm sure that you might have heard of the Southern Oregon University loss that happened back in 2017, in which I'm trying to remember, I think it was Anderson Construction said, please make payment, and $1.9 million went to a hacker. And then we've all heard of the Netflix one as well. So these are all really scary scenarios and they can happen anytime. Again, there's insurance that can be purchased to help protect you if something like this happens. It's really important to know that not every policy is the same, and that there aren't a lot of actuarial there's not a lot of actuarial science behind the pricing that has been set. And so I started in insurance with cyber specifically back in 2007. And when I first started, the application that needed to be completed was 26 pages long. You had to have a degree from MIT in order to complete it. There was actually a primer that went with it that I think was over 50 pages. And it was a very expensive policy, but it was robust, right? And then fast forward to maybe 5 years ago, basically you had to have a pulse. You gave your name, your address, how much money you made, what industry you were in, answered a few quick questions, and boom, you had insurance that was really similar to the one that first came out in 2007, but obviously enhanced even more because, social engineering wasn't around back then. So there's been this evolution of application. And now we're in this phase with insurance where, okay, the application's a little bit longer. Don't worry, you don't need a degree from MIT to complete it. But there are a lot more security questions that are coming up, and they're going to want to know how you're doing your backup, who's doing your backup, what kind of firewalls you have in place. We're going to talk about multi-factor authentication here in just a second, but they really, really want to make sure you're protecting yourself to the best of your ability, along with, phone verification and that sort of thing on your on the spoofing, on the emails, right? The social engineering. So that's kind of a little bit of a history on it and what to expect now. And then when it comes to cyber insurance, there's two different types of coverage. There's third party, which is your liability. And that's going to be, your fines and penalties, or actually, no, I take that back. It's more of the violation of the privacy and if you get sued, right? And being able to protect yourself. Then there's the out-of-pocket expenses, which is first party, and that's where your fines and penalties come into place. So third party here, your privacy liability, security liability, multimedia liability. And then the first party is a lot of times where a lot of the cost in a claim really lies, because after a breach, one, you're going to be losing income. You got to figure out what happened. So you have to have the forensics involved, the notification costs, PR expenses, and potentially, call center solutions. The first party is also going to cover ransomware and extortion. Policies you always want to look at to see, okay, is this going to cover if we need to pay ransomware in Bitcoin or not, or if it's true, real money. Sorry, I'm not a Bitcoin person. This is where your fines and penalties come into place. And those are not just by like the PCI DSS, but it could be from a state as well. And then also your cyber deception, social engineering piece as well. So I briefly touched on multi-factor authentication. Right now, this is a real hot button issue. About mid-year 2021, Travelers Insurance said, hey, we're not writing cyber insurance anymore for businesses that don't have multi-factor authentication in place. And then slowly but surely, other carriers started to follow. I have 2 carriers right now that I can think of off the top of my head that if you don't have remote desktop, they're fine if you don't have MFA. And then there is one off the top of my head, maybe 2, that will write cyber insurance for somebody who has, I'm so sorry, I don't know how to turn my phone off in my office. So apologies for it ringing. But there are 2 carriers that will say, okay, you have remote desktop, but you don't have MFA, we'll give you something if you're under a certain revenue threshold and in a certain class of business, but it's not going to be as broad as what you could get if you have MFA. So basically, what MFA is I log into my computer in the morning, and not only do I have to put in a password a couple different passwords, but also I get a text message to my cell phone that asks me to put in an additional code. So there are other ways to structure MFA, but it can block, like I say here, over 99% of computer attacks. So it's a big thing that the insurance industry is requiring of their clients to help protect themselves as well. So in the deck that I sent out, there is a link to some information on MFA. And this is kind of one of the biggest talking points right now with cyber insurance. So I'm looking at my time. I've got 3 minutes. Oh my gosh, this is so hard to talk quickly about cyber. Sorry, guys. But consider there's no standard cyber policy. Know what you're buying. Look at the different things. I won't talk about admitted versus non-admitted. It's not a big deal one way or the other. You just really need to understand what you're buying and what that means. And then if you can get full prior claims or full prior acts on your coverage, or if you need to have a retro date put in place. So risk management is a huge part of protecting yourself. MFA is a part of that, as well as the other items that I talked about, like your firewall, having a good IT security firm helping you protect your data, protect your business. And so, again, this kind of goes through educating your employees and strong passwords. Oh my gosh, I did it. And here's my summary. So I'll stop talking, I'll breathe, and I'll answer some questions.
All right, thank you very much, Lyndsay. And that was very informational. And so we'll go ahead and open the floor for questions for Lyndsay. And I'll toss the first one out there for you.
Okay.
Since you are in the industry and you do cybersecurity insurance, how does a business owner go about finding a reputable cyber insurance company?
So you want to talk to your insurance agent. And there are a couple different kinds of insurance agents out there, right? There's independent insurance agent like myself. We go out to multiple different carriers and figure out which carrier is the right fit for our clients, whether it's cyber insurance or something else. And then there are agents like Farmers or State Farm. They may not have kind of all of the solutions when it comes to cyber, but talk to your insurance agent and they will be able to help you kind of narrow down the right carrier for you.
Now, is there a different process or a different way of thinking? Because I think most of us, we're familiar with car insurance, life insurance. And so, for example, car insurance will be told, you get, 50,000 for collision or this or that for liability. Is cyber insurance broken down like that too, to where you have to be aware of each individual item and the coverage amount you have for each one? And how does that affect premiums?
Yes. So most cyber quotes that you're going to get, they're going to list out all of the coverages and the limits. Most of the time, you're going to start with $1 million of coverage, and you're going to see your $1 million for the first party. The third party, it's going to break down each thing: extortion, ransomware. Some carriers are starting to sublimit ransomware, and then your social engineering and so forth. So it is going to break down per type of coverage, the amount, and then also you'll see what's called an aggregate. So on your auto insurance per se, let's say you have 500,000 combined single limit, that's the maximum that policy is going to pay out. And on a cyber policy, you're going to see an aggregate or a maximum that's going to get paid out. Does that help answer the question?
Yes, okay. Thank you. And Brad has his hand up.
Yeah, I had a question on, are these generally high deductible claims? I know we're in the property management world and we have insurance coverage and earthquake coverage on properties, and that's astronomically high deductible. So I didn't know if this is the sheep in wolf's clothing where you think you're insured, but you're paying the vast majority of it up front yourself.
Yeah, good question. I have seen deductibles as low as $1,000 on this type of risk. And then obviously clients can choose to insure at a higher deductible. So pretty average is $2,500, $5,000. One of the carriers that I really like with their social engineering, their deductibles at a minimum $5,000 because they want to have the client to have a little skin in the game on that. But yeah, good question. It's not like earthquake, not a 5% or a 10% deductible.
Eric?
Yeah, so I am a big security guy. I work in security IT. So my question would be, if you have steps in place, I know that insurance companies most of the times will give you a questionnaire to fill out of what security practices you're already using. If you check a lot of those boxes, will you have better options, or does it just stay the same standard?
Good question. It depends on the carrier. So some carriers are going to say, great, you qualify. Here you go. Other carriers, yes, you have flexibility and your options. Maybe you want to, a lot of times what I try to do is like, here's the best. We can pull it back if you need to, but let's show you kind of all the bells and whistles. But based upon your questions that are asked and answered, absolutely, it can affect what kind of limits that you're going to receive from the carrier.
Good question. And I want to kind of build off of that because it was actually one of the questions I had as well. But another aspect of that, you being a independent insurance agent, do you get into the habit of, when you're reviewing a potential client, do you advise them what they should do in order to get that better insurance rate? I know you talked about multi-factor authentication, which is necessary nowadays, but do you discuss with them, hey, you don't have a firewall, you don't have an antivirus or anti-malware, your rates are going to be this high. How about you get some of this in place first, and then let's reevaluate? Do you go through that process?
Yes. And if you don't have antivirus, firewall type stuff in place, you're not going to get cyber coverage. But yes, so I recently spoke with a client that I do their other insurance, and, we talk about cyber. They're ready to make the leap and purchase a cyber policy. And we discover, they really don't have MFA in place. They have something close to it, but not really. And so the carrier said, okay, we're agreeing to write the cyber right now, but they need to get MFA in place within 6 months. And the client said, yes, I can do that. And we were still able to give them the top of the line coverage that I wanted them to have, but they did have that requirement to do that. So, but yeah, we're going to look at that application together. And we're going to have a conversation too, to find out kind of, it's important to have what I call like a pre-qualifying conversation when it comes to insurance, because I'm going to ask, do you have that in place? Do you have MFA? I kind of know what the underwriters are going to ask me, so I can get out in front of it and let the insured or client know kind of what we can do.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? And we are at 10:30. I know you said you had a little bit of wiggle room now, so
I don't want to step into Eric's time either. So did I stop sharing my screen? I don't know.
No, you did not.
Okay. I don't know. I was trying to click out of this, and all of a sudden I did something to my screen.
While you're doing that, Dr. Gwendolyn, you unmuted for a second. Did you have a question you wanted to ask real quick before we move on?
No, I didn't realize I had unmuted.
Okay.
A lot of good information.
All right, thank you.
Awesome. Okay, how do I stop sharing? I am so sorry. This is embarrassing. I don't know what I did to my screen while I stopped. So maybe Deanna can kick me out.
What did I see if I can?
I got it.
All right.
Thank you. There it is. All right.
All right. Thank you. Thank you again, Lyndsay. That was very, very informational and very helpful. Hopefully everyone got a lot of good tips out of that. And now we will go to our second half of the presentation with Eric Steffes. So Eric, if you don't mind, I believe you have, go ahead and start sharing your screen and
okay.
Continue.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
Yep. Thank you for being here. Bye.
Okay. So can you guys hear me okay? All right. Yeah. So she set me up perfect here because I'm going to jump in right where she left off. So this form is from Zurich. It's a big cybersecurity company. And this is something similar to what you would receive from an insurance company if you were looking into getting cyber insurance coverage. So I'll go through these questions here, kind of what they mean. A few of the questions are built more towards a corporate-sized company. So I'll skip a few questions that don't relate to a small and medium-sized businesses as much, but can still be beneficial and informational. So starting off, the number one question on the form is, do you have an antivirus? So as we just discussed, this is always going to be the first question any cybersecurity company, IT, or insurance for cyber insurance will ask you. And I really hope that the answer is yes on all of your devices connected to your business network. This will cover you from a wide array of attacks, viruses. Some have built-in malware protection. And the one that we utilize, ESET, will actually allow you to scan documents before opening them in your email to make sure that they are not corrupt or malicious, which is a great tool. So the second one is similar to the first. Do you have endpoint detection and response? So if you do have the antivirus, most times that will be included, the endpoint detection. And all of these things, as we check the boxes here, as Lyndsay said, will help you secure better coverage or just secure the coverage in general. So it's important that, if any of these things you do not have that are affordable, like multi-factor authentication, is free. Antivirus, very reasonable. I think a year-long term with ESET, the partner that we use, is $20 or $30 a year. So very affordable and just easy to set up and great protection. So number 3, do you enforce multi-factor authentication? And this can be for basically any application in your business that you use. Email is a big one, your banking. And I know I touched on this with Neil in our last presentation. But yeah, getting this set up with your phone to send you a text or an app to push a approve button. Like Lyndsay said, this will stop 99% of breaches, which is an incredible ratio, and I would recommend to everyone. So as we look down the list here, this is now centering more towards a business with multiple users in an office setting. So I'm not sure if anyone in here has an office that they work closely with other employees, but these questions here are related to who are these employees and do they have permissions to access everything in the business? Do they have permission to access our employees' credit card information? Do they have access to our employees' phone numbers, email addresses, things like that? So if you have employees that you only need specifically to do, I need you to do data entry. So they should only have access to the data entry work that they need to do. They should not have access to everything. They should not have access to the IT folders, to all of the software downloads and everything like that. So keeping those things secure for the IT professionals or just for the owner to make sure that he is managing everyone using those things that they need to do for work without giving them too much freedom. So our local administrator rights disabled on the workstation. So this is the exact same question. What do they have privileges to access? And I know Lyndsay spoke about that breach where a retired IT employee had his computer hacked and they used his computer to jump into the company. So in my shoes, if I were to have an IT employee retire at a company that we work with, that same day, his access would no longer be allowed. So that would have never happened in the first place, but these are just things that need to be documented and recorded so that we can take the necessary actions before these breaches take place. So I'm going to skip through a couple of these, just they're a little bit related to the previous questions here. Let's see, audit logs maintained for all privileged accounts. So audit logs are usually included in a firewall. So with our firewall partner that we use, SonicWall, you can actually look at every single thing that's happening on your network. Big common thing that I see as of the last few weeks are ping attacks from China, and they're coming in almost maybe every 15 minutes, and we've never had a single one get through. Knock on wood. That's what the firewall is there for. And if you do have a firewall in place, then this box would be checked because you can audit all your logs. So on to the next page here. Patches. So this could be Windows updates. This could be upgrading your antivirus to the next version. And that is always recommended within 30 days of release. So when you sign up for an antivirus, or if you have a Windows computer or even a MacBook, you usually get emails or notifications on your computer that there's a new version available. Now, sometimes it's not the best to do it right away because all of the softwares you use might not be ready for the new update. But I would say if you do it within 30 days, that's a great period of time to make sure that you still have the best security and you're getting everything up to date and ready for all the patches that they put in place. And the reason they're called patches is because they patch what openings there were that the hackers were using. So if they found a way in through your phone, okay, we're gonna make an update and we're gonna patch that so that they no longer can use that to get in. But hackers are always looking for the next thing, and that's why there's constantly patches almost weekly. So within how many days are all software and firewalls patched? So this is the same thing. We try to keep it under 30 days. And as soon as we do those updates, we go through and say, hey, is everything still working okay? Are your software still functioning okay? Because they do tend to sometimes cause issues with software that haven't been updated to run on the new version yet. And number 11, do you conduct vulnerability scans on at least a quarterly basis? So a vulnerability scan is basically going through your company's information and seeing if there is anything that is not backed up, seeing if there's anything that everyone has access to that's important data. If everybody has access to that, anyone who gets targeted by a breach, if they're successful, will also have access to that data. So it's important to go through your personal information and your company data and make sure that that is all secure, and who needs to access it are the only ones who can access it. Do you maintain an inventory of unpatchable or unsupported technology? So this usually occurs with old printers, really old devices. I know some people who are still using Windows 7, Windows XP, Server 2008. These things are EOL, which means end of life, meaning the Microsoft company no longer provides security patches for those systems. At that point, they become a liability. So if there are items in the office or at home, wherever your business is running from, make sure to document those and possibly get them offline, because that's just a disaster waiting to happen, I would say. Do you utilize segmentation for the purpose of protecting mission critical or high value assets and systems? So this basically goes back to, are you using segmentation and backups to protect mission critical or high value assets and systems? So what we do for this specifically is we have multiple locations where things are documented, all of our systems, the system names, and where our backups are going. And we keep backups in multiple places. We usually keep a local backup on site on a hard drive, and then a cloud backup and a copy of that cloud backup in another data center. So we usually utilize 3 different locations so that everything mission critical, high value is always protected in multiple locations in case there are multiple disasters, which is rare, but it can happen. And this goes back to a large corporate setting. So I'm gonna skip that question there. Do you monitor perimeter network traffic, including internet traffic into and out of your organization? So this is the same as that audit log that I spoke about earlier. You can monitor everything from basically any firewall that you purchase that runs on your network, software, or if it's a software firewall or a physical device, they will have a log that shows you everything that's going on. So it's really important to have one of those. I know that in smaller businesses and home businesses that are running, residential Comcast or Ziply fiber networks, it's a little bit harder to put these in place. But in a business Comcast network or a Ziply business network, it is almost a must. I would recommend, even if it's a cheaper end firewall, it's still giving you protection from outside pings and attacks that could potentially lead to a breach. So these next two questions here touch base on a lot of what our last presentation was about. And that points to email. So email traffic, and this is where a large part of social engineering comes in, the phishing emails, the spoofing. And there is many ways that we can help stop this at the front line. And there are many ways with Microsoft's tools that come with Outlook and Office 365 to monitor the email traffic and where they're coming from. So I'm going to post something in the chat here. Let's see if I can get it to pop up. Let's see here. There we are. So this document that I posted in chat is what we spoke about in our last presentation about the DMARC, DKIM, and SPF records. So this is all free, and it is offered from Microsoft to set up on your domain email accounts. And that form is exactly how to do that and how to set all three up. And those basically allow safe sending and block out all of those spam and phishing attacks almost tenfold. So they will block, I would say 80 to 90% of those phishing emails that are coming in, and make it way easier to manage the spam and things like that without having to pay for a third-party spam filter. So that's really important. It's a little technical to set up, but there's clear instructions in that document that will show you the way. And that points to our question here. So they are asking if you have these set up. You would say yes if you follow that document, and you're right on your way to getting better coverage just from a free service that Microsoft offers. So these here are big corporate level network intrusion detection systems. These are all included in a higher level firewall suite package. And we use suite packages at the law firms that we work with because they have very, very critical data that needs to be 100% locked down. There's zero way that information is getting out. So we utilize all of these intrusion detection systems, prevention systems, so that if there is a breach, they have to jump through 50 walls to get to where we have our critical data. And we would catch them with all of these systems here before they would be able to get in. So our web application firewalls utilized for internet-facing assets. So this goes to websites, intranet shops. If you've ever worked with companies that sell products online and you have to enter an email and password and it brings you into their database, these are kind of what they're talking about here. If you have a website where you're selling products, are these websites secure with a firewall? And that is web designers will usually work that out with you on how to set those up, or have a third party come in and make sure that your websites are connected. Do you conduct basic information security training for all employees? This was one of the things that we touched on majorly in our last presentation here, and that is educating your employees about potential risks, staying up to date with phishing attacks, making sure that all employees are aware that if there is a link, if there's money involved, we know the right actions to take. So that is very important. I think that's a huge thing that insurance companies will look at. If you're not providing any training for any cybersecurity issues or potential breaches, then that's a little bit of a red flag for the insurance company to say, hey, they don't really know anything, so they're more susceptible to click on some of these emails. Do you conduct a simulated phishing attack for all employees? So this is a question that causes some disagreements with a lot of people. They think this is unethical to basically trick your employees. But at the same time, if they do fall for the trick, then there is potential that they could have just caused a data breach. So I would say, in my opinion, that this could be a good thing as long as the consequence is educational. The consequence is not termination or suspension or things like that. It should be educational. If they click on a simulated phishing attack email, have an action defined for the employee to say, hey, that wasn't real. That was sent by us to test and see if you guys are really looking at the email before opening it. Now we can say, hey, you clicked on the email. Let's go through a little bit of a course and teach you the things to identify before you're just opening and clicking the emails immediately. So I think that's probably the most important thing, especially in a small business, because they send out mass emails, these hackers and data breach companies. They'll send out mass emails, and as soon as someone clicks on it, if they get any information from you, those get sold to telemarketers, and you'll get calls for the rest of your life trying to sell you things that don't exist. So that one's a big one. We're going to skip this one here. These are big corporate questions, and we'll go down to number 24 here. Do you conduct penetration tests? So a penetration test is usually done by a third party, and they will come in and hammer your network with attacks, hammer your email with attacks, hammer your firewall with attacks, scan everything on your network to see if there's any way in. And I think these are important, especially if you have mission critical data, because they will write up a report when they're done about how they got in, if they got in, and what steps you need to take to get those locked down so that the penetration cannot get through. So these are utilized heavily in medium to large size businesses, because if there's an annual penetration test, all those patches, if there's anything behind, those penetrations are going to get in. So being aware of those and letting your IT company know, hey, we have openings in our phone system. They're getting in through a printer. And now we can go through and say, hey, we fixed all of these things, and now we're way more secure than we were before the pen test. And that would have never happened, or we would have never known if that never took place. So instant responses, it's great to have a plan in place saying, hey, if there's a fire, if there is a data breach, do we have our data secure? How can we get it back? And that's where backups come in. It's really important to have all of your data backed up on site and off site, is my recommendation. And this just goes on about all of the backups. Do you store them on your premise? Do you store them in the cloud? Do you store them on premise and offline? So turned off there, sorry about that. All of these go through how are you saving your backups, where are they located, and how can we utilize them in case of a disaster? So this whole questionnaire is just basically what you would receive if you applied for cyber insurance. And yes, it looks very daunting, but you don't have to fill all of these boxes, especially if you're in a smaller business. But it is important to have the ones that mean the most, which is multi-factor authentication, backups, and making sure that you have education around these things so they know that you're not susceptible to data breaches. So is there any questions about this?
Yeah, thank you, Eric. I think I'll start. I have a question. So first, can you spell out the name or in chat the name of the antivirus program that you said you recommend? And my question regarding that antivirus software, if a business is home-based, would you recommend that same one that you're mentioning or something different? Like, for example, most homes use Avast, McAfee, Norton. Is the one you're mentioning a better option for home-based businesses?
Absolutely. I think it's better in every way. I think using a free antivirus is great, but you get what you pay for. So this ESET in particular, obviously we're a little bit biased because we're partnered with them and they've really given us a great hope in the protection. Thankfully, we've never had any viruses come through undetected. And you can set them to run scheduled scans. So I would really recommend, if you're going to get an antivirus, whether it be our ESET, the one that we recommend, or any paid service, to do the paid service, not just the free version. I know that a lot of new laptops will come with a free McAfee year subscription. I uninstalled that immediately. I've had, really bad experiences with McAfee. A lot of things slip by. They don't have that endpoint protection. So I'll post the website of the antivirus in the chat.
Okay,
and they do also have home versions or business versions as well.
Well, for a home-based business, would it be best to get the business version?
Yes, I would say the business version would be better. They include, the scans for links in there. They have a banking web browser through ESET that you can open. That is a completely secure browser that you specifically just open your banks on, and things like that. It's just a lot of really nice quality of life improvements from the home version.
Okay. And Brad.
I have a question. We have an IT company we use, but we do have people working remotely. So we have firewalls and everything set up at our office, but if they're logging into our office remotely from their own home network, do we need to do something differently to have that firewall protection coming from their home network, or are we covered still basically because they're coming in through our network?
So with the firewall, you go in to the firewall, your IT company would go in and allow their home IP address to connect to your office. So I don't know if are they utilizing a VPN? Okay, so
no, everything we have is web-based. So they're logging in remotely to a third-party software, basically.
Okay, so that's exactly where multi-factor authentication would come into play. That would be your guarantee of security. So you can't physically protect their home office if they're remoting into your work. So if somebody got into their home computer, now they can jump into the office. But if there's multi-factor authentication, the only way they can do that is if they have a phone or the app where that multi-factor authentication code lies. Okay. So even if they gain access, if they don't have their phone, they're still not going to get in. So I would say that's a big, important thing to have with remote workers.
And Dr. Gwendolyn.
Thank you, Tetonian and Eric. My question, and I think you partially answered it in what you said to Brad. You've talked a lot in your presentation about the larger organizations and the protections and firewalls they should have. As a small home-based business, you mentioned towards the end the multifactorial authentication, and you had two other things that could be done. Can you tell me what those were? You had a total of 3 for smaller businesses.
Yeah, so the first one would be, multi-factor authentication or dual authentication. And that is, with your banks, your email, anything that you're logging into, if you can attach your phone number, your email address, preferably phone number, or application to it to let you in through another device, that is number one, the best protection possible. The second would be a paid antivirus program, which is ESET, Kaspersky, Sentinel, Sophos. There's quite a few of them. And that third thing would be an entry-level firewall if you're using mission critical data. So you can pick up a SonicWall firewall for $250. You can plug it into your network, and it comes with an instruction manual on how to set that up. And I would say another good option would be, of course, to back up your data. And there are, the one off the top of my head for smaller businesses is called Carbonite. And this will run a backup off to a cloud every day. You can schedule it weekly. And that one's much more affordable than these massive, corporate backup companies that are storing your data in 5 different states and 2 clouds and disaster recovery efforts in Texas and all these big expensive ones. I would say Carbonite would be the most affordable for a small business.
All righty then. And one last thing, some of the options that you talked about when you were talking about the larger businesses and protections, is there an offsite server that would have things backed up to it that would bring the data back up if they did not have it saved from the firewall? Say a breach happened. Does it go to an offsite server if you have the paid services?
Correct. Yes. So I'll talk to what we use. We use the company Barracuda. Intronis is their backup software. So we store data locally. We store data in Texas. We store data in North Carolina. So if there was a breach, the first thing we would do, take the network down completely. Everyone goes offline. We target where it went, clear that computer, rebuild it, grab our backup from Texas. If the Texas one is down, we'll grab it from North Carolina, and boom, put it back on the servers. We're back up in an hour and a half. And now we just saved hundreds of thousands of dollars of time, labor, third-party efforts to unencrypt all the ransomware. And that's the beauty of backups, because if we can identify it with our firewall that we're getting attacked, take everything off, restore the backup after we've cleaned the infected system, and we're back online the same day.
Great question. I think is there another question before we close out for the day? All right, well, thank you, Eric. That was very helpful, very informational. So some quick information before we finish up today. Our next SBSS workshop will be on May 4th, 10 to 11 via Zoom, with our topic of discussion being small business support, what's available, and that'll be presented by Matt Craigie and Dan Diaz. So make sure to register in order to receive the Zoom link. So thank you today to our presenters, Lyndsay and Eric Steffes, for providing this valuable and timely information as cybersecurity threats are intensifying against not just larger businesses, but small businesses as well. So thank you to our sponsor, Elizabeth Case of Yellow Dog Consulting, and see you all at our next Small Business Solution Series workshop. And have a great day. Bye.